The first feature we're going to see in the new Revit 2023 release is the ability to measure in 3D. Previously, we were only able to use the measure tool in 2D views such as plans or sections and elevations. And now in 2023 we can use this in the 3D views. So we can see we've got a section of our external wall here in the 3D model, so let's zoom into some of the detail. And now from the Modify tab we can see we have the measure tool and it's available for us to use, so we'll select this to enable it. And we can see now that even though the objects are sectioned, we can still snap to them and we can get some accurate measurements whilst we're there in the 3D view. And again, we're not having to find ourselves a 2D section or plan view in order to make these measurements. We can just continue working in the view that we're actually looking at. We're also able to enable the chain option in 3D, and this is really useful as it allows us to measure both length, depth, height of an object within the 3D view, and again we're not having to find a separate 2D views, sections, details, etc. to make those measurements. So I think that's a good improvement to 2023 and something that will certainly prove useful. A tip to help make the temporary dimensions more readable when using the measure tool. We go to the options and actually change the size of the text. So to do this, we'll go over to the File pull down menu, choose Options from the bottom, and then from the Graphics tab in here, we can then come and change the size of the temporary dimensions. The default is actually 8, I have mine set to 12, and this makes it big enough so that we can read it easily on screen and makes it a lot more useful for us. The next feature we're going to look at is the ability to duplicate materials along with their assets in one go. So going into the material browser, and we'll go and find the wall paint material. So in the 3D view behind us we can see we have this blue wall paint. So we can see that material here in the browser, and that's using the wall paint blue render appearance asset. Now prior to 2023, if we right clicked and opted to duplicate the material, we would duplicate it with a shared asset, and this would mean that the new material here that we've duplicated, so if you wanted to change this to a different color, say green, well, it wouldn't actually duplicate the appearance asset. So by changing this now, this is still the wall paint blue, by changing the color of it, then that would actually affect the original material as well. So once that updates, we can see both of those are affected. So let's cancel that and we'll go back in. So now in 2023 we have the ability here to duplicate the material and also to duplicate the asset at the same time. This now means that we have our new material, which we can name accordingly. But we can also see that it's actually duplicated the render material as well. So we can now come and rename this accordingly too. And any changes that we make here, so let's come and set this to a shade of green, will only affect the new material that we've created, and it won't update the original material here. Again, previously, if we duplicated it with the shared assets, and let's make this one a different color again, then if we knew that we had to do it, we could then come and duplicate the assets separately and then rename this one. So this new feature allows us now to create these new materials, and it saves us several clicks, and obviously if we forget to make those extra duplicates in 2022, we can have quite a dangerous effect by changing all sorts of materials that maybe we don't realize are actually using the shared assets here. So actually this is going to be a really good feature for when we're creating materials, to actually duplicate the asset at the same time and stop all of that accidental changing of materials that we didn't mean to have. So now we have those wall paint materials, it's quite easy for us to come and use our paint tool. And now we can go and search for our wall paint materials. And we can see they're all lined up with their different colours. And it's going to be quite easy now to come and paint these onto the different walls as we need them. So that's going to be a really useful feature and one that I think will benefit us for Revit 2023. The next feature we'll have a look at for Revit 2023 are the new icons that indicate whether a view has been placed on a sheet in the project browser. So looking at the project browser here, we can see we have these icons, and it's quite a simple setting really. So if the icon is blue, the little square is blue, then that means that this view has been placed onto a sheet. So I can see a couple of blue icons here. As soon as a view is placed, and this allows us to look at another feature, which is actually the ability to swap views on a sheet. So looking at the sheet here, if I select this one, we see up on the ribbon here, we've got the usual tools that we had prior to this, to size crop and to activate the view. But now we can see we've got a couple of drop downs, and we can see we have a list of views here now. Above this we've got alignment, so we've got view origin or viewport center, so I'll leave this at viewport center. And now I can come and swap it for a first floor rooms. And this view now will get replaced, so the ground floor GA has been replaced with the first floor rooms plan. And we can also see that the indicators here, so this is now no longer blue because it's no longer on the sheet, and the first floor rooms has now turned blue because this has been placed onto the sheet for us. So this could be a useful tool to be able to swap views for different levels and yet keep them aligned. We'll swap that back so we get our ground floor planned back in. And we can see when we're changing these views here, views that are already placed on sheets, we can see the sheet number. So we know not to choose those, and if we do choose those, then it's going to give us the warning that we can't place a view on more than one instance of a sheet. This might go hand in hand with the feature that came in the 2022.1 release, which was the ability to actually duplicate sheets now. So with this sheet here, we can duplicate it on its own with any detailing that we've added, and we can actually duplicate the view as well, so that we get an exact copy of this sheet. So if I choose this one, now it's asking me about the view itself rather than the sheet. So I'll create a new view duplicated with detailing. And we can see now that in the project browser we've got a duplicate view, copy one. It's also got the blue marker here, so we know that it's placed on the sheet. And looking further down, we've got a copy of our sheet. And once again, we could select this view, and we could come and swap it for one of our other views. So those few tools together make it quite useful. Just to show, if we go into the project browser here and we just right click, we can see at the bottom of the menu here that we can turn those icons off if we don't like them or don't need them. So those icons, equally if you don't see them and you wonder where they are, you can just right click and they're at the bottom of the menu here to switch those on and off. The next new feature that we're going to look at in Revit 2023 is the ability to order the actual printed sheets within a PDF. So in the previous release in 2022, we had the option to export direct to PDF built in. We didn't need to use a separate PDF driver. So that option has been added to the quick access toolbar, so we can access that without going through the menu. So we currently have this set up to combine the views into a single PDF file. And really what we want to be able to do is to control the order of those sheets within that file. So looking at our selected views and sheets here that we're going to print, we'll go edit those. So this box has changed slightly. We're going to filter these out so we can see just the sheets. And then we'll just use the check all to select all of those sheets. Now at the bottom here we can see we can actually edit the print order. So choosing this opens up a separate window. And we can see we've got three options here. So firstly we have browser organization. So if I select that one, it's just letting us know that the order won't be preserved if we've edited. But now what we have is the option to choose from any browser organization that we have. So many projects, when we have lots of sheets, we normally have some kind of parameter to group the sheets together. And if we're creating a sheet list, again, sometimes we'll use a parameter to organize that into a logical sequence. So actually we can come and use those browser organization tools to match the print order of the sheets within the PDF. So again, if I use the sheet prefix one here, we can see these reorganizing. Or equally, we can go back to our specific browser folder and we get the same organization as we have in the project browser here. Obviously, we can just use the sheet numbers in ascending order. But then the other option is to manually sort the sheets out. And this just means now that we can actually select sheets, so we can select multiple sheets if we want to, and we can literally just drag those into the place where we want them to be. So again, we can just choose a group of sheets and drag those into the order that we're looking for. So once we have that set up, we can say OK. This actually then reorganizes this view here. So actually I saw one here that I don't actually want printed. But now we've got that, we can come and save this either as a new set or just save it as the current one. And then we're ready to go and print those, and when we get our single PDF file, they'll be in the order that we've set them up in using that print order tool just there. So that's going to save us a lot of hassle. I often hear stories of people having to go and edit PDFs in other software to reorganize the sheets. So the fact that we can now do that direct in Revit before we create them will save us some time when it comes to issuing a large number of drawings. The next feature we'll have a look at in Revit 2023 is the ability to filter schedules by sheets. This means that when a schedule is placed on a sheet, only the objects that are visible in the views on that sheet will actually be displayed in the schedule. A good example of this would be a furniture schedule, where we can have one schedule and place it on multiple sheets and have it only display the objects that are in the individual rooms that are on the sheets, and therefore making it easier to create room data sheets. So we have a furniture schedule already created, the room furniture here. We have a view of one room placed onto a sheet. So if I drag this out, then the schedule as it's set up is to schedule all furniture in all rooms. So let's open this schedule up. And we can see here that we've got the fields that allow us to create the schedule in here. And when we go to the filtering, we now have this option here to filter by sheet. So we'll check this, we don't need to do any more. And now when we swap back to our sheet here, we can see that we've actually got just that conference room there scheduled. And this makes it nice and simple. We don't have to produce lots of separate schedules and filter them per room or per level or anything like that. We can just place it on the sheet, and then whatever is visible within that sheet will appear within the schedule. So again, we can use some of our other tools. So looking at the sheet here, we can right click and we'll come and duplicate this with detailing. So without the view, but with detailing. And this will duplicate the sheet, and the schedule is there, but obviously there's nothing visible, so we're not seeing any objects. So now we could go up and we could actually choose a different room plan. So we have a meeting room just here, so we drag this out and we can see straight away that that schedule is now showing us the chairs and the table for the meeting room. If we use our swap view feature, so we can go and swap this to be the training room, and again we can see that schedule update straight away to show us the furniture that's inside the training room. So obviously we're demonstrating this with furniture, but it can be used with all sorts of equipment. I think it'd be a really useful feature for creating those room data sheets and not having to create lots and lots of schedules. And again, getting it set up so it's placed on a sheet and being able to duplicate that sheet means we can have a lot of consistency between the views and makes it a lot better and gives us a much better presentation. The next feature we're going to look at in Revit 2023 is the inclusion of common parameters with model groups and also with linked Revit models. This also allows us to tag model groups and linked Revit models. So what this means is, in this file here, if I select we've got these apartments here as groups, we actually start to get some of the common parameters that we would see on other objects, such as a mark, comments, and if we choose edit type on this group, we have the identity data such as descriptions, type marks, etc., as well as these new IFC parameters. So again, another new feature of 2023 are these built-in IFC export parameters, which will make exporting IFC files a bit more consistent and easier to define. But the option that this gives us now is that we can include information on groups themselves rather than having to rely on the objects within the group having that information. And this also means now that we can tag groups and linked models and display some of that information. So in this model here, we've got the apartments as groups, which is a common workflow. And what we're able to do then is to assign an apartment number and also a description, as well as any other information that we might want to add about those apartments. Now, coming to the Annotate tab here, we can now use a multi-category tag to then read off that information. So let's turn off the leader, and we can just come and place these tags around on the apartment groups here. And now they're reading the actual information from the group itself. So if we do start to change the number, then we can see that updated in the tag, and equally we can edit the tag itself to go and change those numbers as well. And being type driven, we can also edit the group, and if we start to change the description here, then we can see that changed on the different locations that we've placed that group. So I think this is another good example of improving the workflow as Revit has developed. Groups have often been used for apartments or bathrooms, kitchens, etc. And being able to add some information onto the group itself and then to tag those groups and also schedule those groups gives us another option for workflows for creating more complex buildings. So I think this is going to be a great improvement to 2023. So the next new feature we're going to look at in Revit 2023 is the option to activate the controls and the temporary dimensions. In previous versions, they was always active, and this means that when you select multiple objects, specifically if you're in a work shared project or we have lots of pinned elements such as the panels inside of curtain walls, then you end up with quite a lot of symbols, and it actually makes it quite difficult to work on this model with all of these symbols here. So this is a nice simple tool. It just deactivates those if we want them. So turn the option off, and then when we're selecting multiple objects, we see just the objects. If we activate it, we can then see all of the pinned objects. This works in all of the views. So again, if we're looking in a plan view, we can select multiple objects in here. And again, we can see all of the pin tools. We've got several dimensions and things going on. So we can just switch those off or switch those on as we need them, just to make our workspace a little bit cleaner. The next feature we're going to have a look at for Revit 2023 is the option to have imported or linked CAD models actually cut in 2D views. So in sections and plans, we can actually cut through those imported CAD models. So what we have here is a DWG that's linked in of this structure. And we're seeing it as it would currently be in Revit 2022 and earlier. So looking in the plan view, we can actually see the entire of the model. So we're in the level 0 plan here, and we can see we've got all of the roof structure visible, even though we're on a level 0 plan view. And looking at the section, so we have a section line through here, which is quite a narrow section. So looking at the section, again, we can see all of the foundations and all of the columns, etc. So it's a nice simple feature, just selecting the CAD drawing once we've imported it. And in the properties here, we've got this option to enable cutting in views. So just by checking this box, we can see once we apply this, In the plan view, we actually see the plan cut through at that level, and also the section view now is showing us just the extents of the section. So that's actually going to be a really useful feature, just a small checkbox, but when we're collaborating with people not using Revit, or we have existing data that we need to use, then we can actually do that properly now in plans and sections, rather than having to come up with complicated workarounds to do this. Amongst the many other features that are in Revit 2023, there's a few that's worth pointing out. So first, we've got a lot of improvements when it comes to working with large models. And this should be a welcome improvement, as we're all working on bigger and bigger projects nowadays. We can apply conditional formatting by family and type in schedules, so we can say, right, a particular family or type of family and format the schedule based on that family, which we wasn't able to do before. The textures that we use for materials and decals, well, these are now supported with cloud paths, so we can store those on somewhere like BIM 360 or other cloud server, which again, as we're all working remotely and collaborating more in the cloud, then that's a real welcome feature. We have some extra filtering options for walls, so we can look at the base or the top constraint or base offset, top offset. So again, we can use this to get walls that are on particular levels or span between particular levels, etc. And finally, Dynamo 2.13 is integrated with a refreshed interface, so there's been quite a few changes in there. The interface is a lot cleaner and more modern, and obviously extra nodes, so if you're a Dynamo user, it's definitely worthwhile checking that out too.